Euphoria is a show that people can't help but talk about. From the wild clothes to the even wilder storylines, this HBO teen drama has made its mark on audiences' minds and hearts.
Wait, is this f***ing play about us?
While the show is over the top in pretty much every imaginable way, it also manages to find a relatable core that keeps it tethered to Earth. But what is it specifically that makes the show so engaging? And somehow, despite it all, relatable?
Every time I feel good, I think it'll last forever. But it doesn't.
This is The Total Take, where we break down the most analyzable films and TV shows of all time through visual storytelling, writing, world, symbolism, and impact. Our first category is visual storytelling. It's impossible to talk about Euphoria without talking about the visual nature of the show. Above all else, it's the show's biggest calling card, and that's for very good reason. While many teen shows try to be true to life and show realistic versions of high schooldom, Euphoria goes in the total opposite direction. The show is much more concerned with aesthetics and how things feel than the reality of any given situation. And it pulls us into the subjective worlds of each character through its use of vibrant, sometimes disorienting visuals.
This feels like some sort of memory of high school, I think.
The lives of these characters often feel like they're spinning out of control, and often the camera goes with them. From the world stopping when they see their love across the room, to the room itself flipping as drugs kick in. We aren't just watching these characters' experiences, we're living them with them.
I wish you could see yourself the way the rest of the world does.
Lighting is a major aspect of Euphoria's iconic cinematography. The show swings from cold, lonely blues to warm, burning yellows and everything in between. Everything feels heightened when you're a teen, including how the world around you looks. And the show attempts to bring that feeling to life. At that age, it can often feel like all eyes are on you during pivotal moments. And this too is made literal on the show through the use of actual spotlights.
We came up with this idea of telling it almost in these sort of snapshots. And so we killed all the lights, put this giant, 20K, spotlight on that we would just flash for a second.
The show has an ethereal, dreamy quality that feels more like you're floating through memories than experiencing a regular linear story. We punch in to focus on a minute detail, the kinds of things you often don't even notice in the moment, but find stick in your mind long after an event. Or we take a more winding path, following a character on their journey. There's also a key focus on close-ups. Even the characters themselves aren't always sure what they're doing or why they're doing it, but allowing us to get such a close read of them gives us new insights into their deepest emotions.
Don't let logic get in the way of a good story. Once an audience falls in love with a character, you can take people anywhere.
Of course, it's impossible to talk about the visual aspects of Euphoria without going into the fact that the show's entire aesthetic was, to put it kindly, heavily borrowed from the work of Petra Collins. In a now deleted part of an interview with Hungarian magazine Punkt, Collins explained that HBO and showrunner Sam Levinson initially brought her in to work on the show because he liked her style. But in the end, they ended up removing her from the project, but keeping her visual aesthetic. While this was talked about some during the show's first season, it's come back up again recently as Levinson had, allegedly, yet again brought on a female creative only to get rid of her and keep her ideas with his show The Idol. Some speculated that these allegations were the reason for the slight visual shift away from the more intensely dreamy style of Season 1 in favor of a slightly more real-world feeling Season 2. For her part, Collins has continued to find success across the industry, from photographing major magazine covers to shooting music videos for Olivia Rodrigo. Our next category is the writing. Our entire understanding of the world of Euphoria is shaped by the fact that we're brought into it through the lens of a very unreliable narrator.
Jules was my first love. I'd like to remember it that way. I don't know if that's actually true, though. I think I was high for too much of it.
Rue lies a lot, to herself, to the people around her, and even to us. And so the view of the world she gives us is very subjective. But of course, the reality is that every story is subjective. Even when one is trying to tell the truth, a narrator will, by the nature of human experience, bend the story around their own biases and ideas.
She quickly realized that there are two kinds of people in the world: the people who sit in the chairs with their feet in the footbath, and the people who kneel in front of the footbath.
And so Rue being our narrator reminds us of something very important. No version of someone's story told through someone else's eyes will ever be able to paint the full picture. We're always seeing someone's idea of someone else. And this is true in real life too, especially when we're young. So much of our worries are about how we're being perceived by others, and the stories they're making up about us in their minds.
Like whatever the fuck you've done.
What have I done, okay?
It's not like it's that big of a secret, Cassie.
Rue's dubious narration also highlights the way we often lie to ourselves, working to convince ourselves that we're making the right choice, even when we aren't, or that everything will be okay, even as we're actively messing things up. And while it might be easy to pin Rue's unreliable narrator status on her addiction, when we get other narrators, we see how this kind of personal myth-making is something that we all engage in to some degree. In Jules' special episode, it's not narration but her speaking with her therapist, but even here we can hear her working through these kinds of ideas she's built up about herself and her life and the people around her, and how they don't always align with the way she wants things to be.
I mean, that's what this has always been about, is like staying alive.
Then at the end of season 2, Lexi takes the reins, and we see the world through her eyes, along with all of the characters also watching this subjective view of their world literally play out on the stage in front of them.
Ugh, I look disgusting. Hey, Holly, I'm in the middle of something. It's just this dress is so not flattering.
Here, the show puts forth one of our biggest fears, not only having to really see what other people think of you, but also realizing that it doesn't at all align with your conception of yourself.
I deserve this, right? Because I've actually lived a life?
Everything on Euphoria feels turned up to 11, but that is often how life feels when you're a teenager, and experiencing so many parts of life and yourself for the first time. The fear, the joy, the sadness, all of the most intense feelings of life crashing together and washing over you wave after wave.
This shit is hard and confusing. The last thing you need is to feel worse because you're not feeling something you're supposed to feel. You do what feels good to you.
The show's heightened reality actually allows it to be more emotionally relatable because it doesn't get caught up in being true in its quest to feel real. But at the same time, the writing adds little touches of real life that do make these characters feel like people we could come across in our own world. Even things as small as the fact that they really talk like teenagers.
I can't stand Ethan.
I was wondering.
I don't know, he's sweet and something good finally happens and I'm a million times more miserable.
Each episode often loosely focuses on a different character, but we always still get to see how all of their worlds intersect. And the show is very interested in that web of humanity. We see how each character affects and is affected by others. No one exists in their own little bubble. Every action has a domino effect that radiates outwards.
Cassie kept her promise and never told anyone about that night. She also never saw her dad again. She fell in love with every guy she ever dated.
Euphoria is interested in digging into the characters' flaws and unpacking what drives their behavior, but not in punishing them in the way we've come to expect from other teen shows.
Sometimes good people are forced to do bad things, you get what I'm saying? Some people's actions, they do what they have to do, and that doesn't exactly define who they are.
Good people make bad decisions, and bad people make worse decisions. And the show follows the cause and effect, but doesn't moralize. It instead trusts that the audience can understand why these were the wrong choices.
And so our job is to stay in line with their heart and guide them so that every decision they make, whether it's good or bad, we understand where they're coming from.
And just because it doesn't moralize doesn't mean that no one faces consequences for their actions. It's just that the consequences are usually emotional rather than the more carceral outcomes we've come to expect, like detention or a night in lockup before parents swoop in with disappointed faces. These characters suffer through the emotional pain that results from their misdeeds.
Everyone keeps looking at me like I'm the bad guy, but I'm not the bad guy.
Well, you're not the good guy.
That's for sure.
Though sometimes the consequences are physical. Though each character at first does seem to loosely fit into a well-worn teen trope, the mean girl, the manic pixie dream girl, the repressed jock, the druggie, etc. Because we're offered a look inside their subjective worlds, we get a better, deeper understanding of who they are as full people. And sure, the person underneath isn't always perfect, but that's life.
I'm just trying to focus on myself.
Why?
because I keep making mistakes and not learning from them.
The show itself is certainly not without faults. Since it first began airing, there's been discourse about its sex scenes and whether they're just showing a part of life or gratuitous and creepy. Certainly overall on screen there's been a move away from these kinds of overt sex scenes, making the show stand out even more.
Aren't you afraid people are gonna look down on you?
At least I'm left.
And that's on top of the fact that while the actors are adults, the characters are very much teenagers. It is absolutely true that sexual discovery is a part of teenagerdom for many people, but the way it appears on the show often makes it feel more like the scenes solely exist to be titillating rather than narratively enlightening. But on the other side of the coin, Sydney Sweeney herself has said that she's not only for Cassie's nude scenes, but indeed feels that they're integral to the character.
It's a form of communication for her. Without that, she doesn't know anything else. Those scenes are setting her up in a different path than what she would have without it.
Another issue some audience members have with the writing is the way that certain threads will just be dropped out of the blue. In some ways, this is true to life. Sometimes things end or people move on and you don't really get an explanation as to why. But narratively, it can sometimes feel like the show is taking the easy way out rather than finding ways to address a plot hole or write themselves out of a corner. Given the hectic way the show is written,
I would rewrite it, and I'd rewrite it while shooting 40, 50 drafts of it.
It's very unusual for a television show to function this way.
It's hard to know if these are deliberate choices or just accidents of the chaos. Now, let's take a look at symbolism. When you're a teenager, it feels like so many parts of your life are out of your control, and the one way you can regain some of that control is through your look. Outfits and makeup are a major point of symbolism on Euphoria. Like the cinematography and storylines, they're not necessarily meant to replicate real life, but to evoke that heightened feeling of being. The looks are about how these teens want to be seen by the world. They're figuring themselves out and constantly changing how they appear in the process. Clothing and makeup have long been seen as a type of armor against the world, and no one needs a good set of armor more than these teens.
90% of life is confidence. The thing about confidence is no one knows if it's real or not.
And while these looks are often over the top, they do manage to retain a naturalistic element that keeps them feeling real to some degree. The show often explores what happens when you're made to focus too much on your looks, to the point where you think it's the only thing about you that really matters, with Cassie's storyline.
Yeah, well, you look beautiful, Cassie. You look fucking amazing. It's literally all anyone's ever told you your entire life. Like, listen to yourself. It's exhausting.
She is beautiful, but instead of leading to the happy life we might imagine, it has caused the world around her to warp and only focus on that. She's come to feel like she has nothing else to offer, and so laser focuses on this one aspect of herself to a destructive degree.
Cassie decided to wake up at 4 a.m. that morning to get ready for school, and for those 3 hours she spent getting ready, she only thought about one thing.
Euphoria seamlessly melds dreams with reality. Sometimes this is the effect of drugs, but other times it's just as if we walked into someone else's daydream.
We took it as a central challenge editorially to capture that ecstatic flow, fantasy and memory, and what would be a character reality.
This symbolizes the often rather thin membrane between our dreams and our memories, and sometimes even our present realities, and the way we can often get so caught up in our own heads.
I feel like I've lived most of my life in my imagination. Taking the smallest moments and dreaming them up into something bigger.
The show deliberately keeps us uncertain as to whether some things are happening for real or just in someone's mind, because again, it's about the feeling of what's happening more than the truth. The next category we'll look at is world. Through all of its ups and downs, Euphoria keeps a rather consistently dark tone. Sometimes it's dark comedy, but a lot of the time it's just straight up miserable. No one's having a good time, and if they are, it'll end soon. At that age, it often does feel like the world is closing in around you, and there's darkness creeping in from every corner. But as we see at the end of season 2, there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's also the literal world of the show, the sets. Most of the show is in fact shot on sets to allow for all of the zany camera movements and more precise control over the entirety of the environments. This allows for that dazzling cinematography, but does also add a tiny hint of theatricality to the entire production. and lends it even more of an out-of-this-world element. Music is a huge part of the show. Euphoria uses a wide range of songs, from classics to brand new releases, to set the vibe for this world and give us more insight into the experiences these characters are having. Everything about the show is rhythmic in its own way, but it's the music that brings this all together seamlessly. There are also small audio moments that have big impact as well. Something as small as the click-clacking of Maddie's nails sets a very specific vibe for the scene. And our final category to discuss is impact. The show has certainly made a major impact among a certain range of viewers, from the makeup to the clothes to the online discussions. The fact that it feels more like it's about adults looking back at their teenage lives and trying to untangle all of those memories and emotions allowed it to capture interest across a wide range of ages.
I feel stupid. What? Everyone feels stupid. Who cares? You feel stupid? Yeah, I did. And then I just chose not to feel stupid.
Many of the threads, especially Rue's, seem to have been pretty wrapped up at the end of the second season. But allegedly, season 3 plans to feature a time jump, so we get to see these characters finding their way through the early stages of adulthood.
Don't worry. This is just the beginning.
Even with all of its faults, it would be interesting to get one more peek into these characters' lives, and see how they were, hopefully, able to overcome the trials of their high school lives and move on to bigger and better things. But it's also possible, and maybe even for the best, that the series leaves us at the end of season 2, on edge, a little confused, but with hope for the future.
Most people peak in high school.
I definitely haven't peaked.
I feel like I'm not even a person yet.
Yeah, I'm definitely at like 25% peakness. I feel like I'm at 100.
That's the take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.